The Dallas Cowboys have reported to Oxnard for training camp and will have their first official practice this week. What are the biggest storylines coming out of Dallas Cowboys training camp? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. He is well rested from his nice week off. Landon, how you doing today, sir?
I'm excited, man. Like you mentioned, I got a week off. I got rested. And this is always that time of year I take a week off, and by the end of it, when vacation time is done, I start to really get the itch. Like in football, it's been too long. I'm kind of ready to get back into seeing some pads, some popping, and so I'm always excited about training camp. But because training camp is starting, even a week earlier than it normally would, we really don't have time to waste, and
Nope.
There's lots to kind of get back into the swing of things, because pretty soon that oasis, the lack of it, the desert of information is about to become more than oasis. It's about to become an ocean that you're going to fall into. There's going to be so much information all coming at you at once. So I'm ready for that part, and I'm kind of sick and tired of not hearing any Cowboys news day after day after
Well,
day after day.
I mean, we should have gotten some more Cowboy news. Usually Wednesday is the day the Cowboys have their opening press conference, like opening his training camp, basically like a State of the Union.
Yeah.
That got pushed back until Saturday because of a Jerry Jones trial that's going on right now. So we don't even get the opening press conference that we usually get, but we do have practices on Wednesday and Thursday. But Landon, I want to talk about some of the biggest storylines going into this camp. And I'm going to exclude the Dak Prescott contract because that's all anybody else is talking about. So the biggest storylines outside of the Dak contract, the first one is, when will CeeDee Lamb show up? I think everybody anticipated that CeeDee Lamb would have a deal done by now. We are hours away from the Cowboys taking the practice field. Still no CeeDee Lamb deal. So when do you think this is going to get done?
Yeah, I mean, I still haven't changed my answer, I think, yet from I think it gets done for the first few days of practice. But obviously, as we get closer and closer and you don't hear a ton of movement, I mean, I think there's been some whispers here and there that the two sides are talking, but I start to get a little bit nervous about that prediction. I think at this point am gonna believe that I think CD comes in and they get a deal done probably before the second week of practice. Once these guys get in the same town, and then that kind of really starts putting a lot of positive momentum in these contract talks. I do think that the Cowboys are, the numbers have to be kind of in place in a large degree, right? So I think that the structure of everything is kind of where it needs to be. It's really about getting these two sides together and kind of haggling out the final number. And that's why I don't think that it would be too long or too contentious a holdout, because it's all kind of structured there. And I think it really is just about getting them together and talking about it and kind of hammering out the final number to kind of get him in. But if not, it could linger on. I just don't imagine that this is going to be something that lingers past the first potentially 2 weeks of camp. Only because like I said, I think that they have to be at least like 90% of the way there. It's just kind of figuring out that last little percentage point, and hopefully, no one's feelings get hurt over that process.
And the other thing is every day that CeeDee Lamb misses, he is subject to a pretty hefty fine, which is my next question. Do we see a potential hold in for CeeDee Lamb where he's going to the meetings, he's going to the practices, but he's not actually practicing? Or is he just completely going to be away from the team until he gets a new deal? This hold in thing has become somewhat of a new thing. Jordan Love is currently doing it now with the Packers. We've seen Nick Bosa did it last year with the 49ers. What do you expect to be the case here?
I wouldn't be shocked if he used one of those strategies or even just a holdout strategy. I mean, frankly, the holdout strategy isn't even too terribly bad and expensive. I mean, I think some of the times the teams, it used to be that the team would pay you back, some of that money in good faith after a certain amount of holdout time. But I think that's actually been
that's gone. Yeah, teams can't do that anymore.
So now that that's gone, I think it does show kind of a seriousness when you are doing a true holdout, which is kind of probably the impetus of creating these sort of hybrid hold-ins that maybe you're not getting fined, but you're also not a full participant mentally in these situations. So I do think that with the change in the rules there, that a holdout probably would not last very long and would probably be maybe only, a couple days a week at the most. But if he decided to kind of, be a little bit tricky and try to participate in this hold-in situation, maybe he has a hammy that's tightened up on him. Oh no, guys. And he can't practice this week. I wouldn't be shocked. I just listen. The truth of the matter is that all of this is on the table, and negotiations, they can be tough, right? They can really be contentious all the way up until the point where you smile and shake a hand of a guy that you're going to be working with for the next 4 years and hand him a whole bunch of millions of dollars and everybody's happy, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if all these techniques get used, or if some of these techniques get used, but I honestly still put my betting odds on this getting done in the first few days of camp.
I'll be concerned if we get through the weekend and there's no deal. Like we're into week 2, because then it's like the longer this goes on, the uglier that it could get. So we'll see. I would assume the Cowboys are working really hard to try to get CeeDee Lamb back out of the field by practice 1 or practice 2. But again, no real update yet. So we shall see. All right, Lena, let's talk about the running back battle. My favorite topic in the world, talking about a 29-year-old running back. Who will win the Cowboys running back battle? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. I love nothing more than at the end of the day, sitting on my couch and watching a couple of games. But unfortunately, with the NHL playoffs over and the NBA playoffs over, we just have fewer and fewer games to watch. And the sports aren't sporting the way we'd like them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So just head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, the Cowboys have multiple camp battles going on this year, whether it's the wide receiver 3 battle, the edge 3 battle, the linebacker spot. But I think nationally, everybody is curious about this running back battle. What do you see happening in training camp?
Well, it's an interesting arrangement, I mean, obviously it's going to be a running back by committee situation. And I think, everyone on the outside is kind of anticipating a Zeke-led situation because of the history there, but I don't necessarily anticipate that. I think, as it stands right now, you've got Zeke, you've got Dowdle, you've got Vaughn, Freeman, Malik Davis. Those are the guys who I think that are kind of, there's some other guys on the roster, but those are the guys that are kind of all in the mix in some form or fashion. The problem that we've discussed is that really outside of Vaughn, all these guys are really very similar kind of backs. They're bigger backs. I think the thing that we like about Dowdle a little bit more than the rest of them is that he has a little bit more explosion than some of the other guys. But for the most part, these are all kind of bigger between the tackle guys. I mean, we're looking, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing a picture of Zeke, and I'm interested to see what Marcus's comment is on his weight in this picture. But I think
he looks fine. It's fine.
He looks fine. I think the issue is that, if Deuce Vaughn doesn't provide like some kind of juice for this running back room, there really isn't a ton of juice in this running back room. And if you're looking to have a committee, that's fine. I think you've got a good group to kind of get started. And I like all these guys individually as members of a committee, but they're like I said, since they're all kind of a type, and you don't really have a Tony Pollard type or an explosive guy that's going to, create big plays in the run game the way that you have previously with Pollard. It just feels very limited, right? And it feels like it's a group that is, I like Dowdle a lot as a part of a rotation of backs, but if he's the juice that's in this room, then there's not going to be a lot of explosive plays necessarily created by this group, and that's been traditionally a spot where the Cowboys have been able to kind of generate some explosive plays. So as far as the battle goes, I think if these guys are the end of this, as far as the talent acquisition part, I think there's kind of a pretty clear pecking order with the guys that are in this room. But the question then becomes, are they done with the acquisition? Are they still going to go out there and get there? There's still guys out there that that are buried on depth charts that are I think it's going to get sorted out in training camp once we see depth charts starting to get written out in pencil. And so I think there's going to be more opportunities to add more people to this group. The interesting thing is, can you find somebody it kind of fits that role of an explosive, change of pace back, which is, probably the more difficult archetype to find, this late in the game.
I'm excited to see when the consensus comes of two things, right? It could either be one, okay, this X running back has separated themselves from the pack and he's clearly the best runner of the group, right? Or it's time for the Cowboys to make a move. Like, it just becomes so clear and obvious to everybody at training camp. Like, a lot of these dudes are just dudes, right? And they need to go out and get a guy that can actually lead the backfield. At what point do one of those scenarios play out? I got to imagine, Lane, it's going to be pretty quick. Like, I think we're going to find out within, I'll say 2.5 weeks, like who's going to be the starter or when do they need to go out and make a move. That's one of the things I'm the most curious to see, when it happens and what do they ultimately do at the running back spot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, honestly, I need to see what Deuce Vaughn looks like, period. Like, there's several different guys in this room who I just feel like I need to get eyes on to kind of update my profile on them, right? Royce Freeman being one of them, right? Like, we haven't really seen him yet. I have an idea of who he is, and I've seen his previous work, but I'd like to see him nowadays.
Can I make a hot take here?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything that Deuce Vaughn can do in training camp that would get me excited for him to have a bigger role. It would almost have to be in the preseason when there's actual like live contact.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because I just don't know, like he's probably going to look great in space when everybody's doing the touch tackling. Right. But until it comes down to actual live tackling and like, hey, can you break an arm tackle in the hole? I just don't know how much I'm going to care about training camp stuff.
No, I think that's a very legitimate point. And I think it's based in historical fact that we saw last year. I mean, I think we saw a lot of Deuce Vaughn looking great in training camp. And then when it's time to like actually have to break a tackle or get through the line of scrimmage on an inside run, that's where we started to see some of the struggles that gives you concern, right? And gives you pause. So absolutely. And look, I mean, again, that's part of the reason that I still feel like even, no matter what happens in the first few weeks of training camp, they should still be looking at another running back. They should still be looking at someone else who could potentially provide some juice. And even if they wanted to keep Deuce Vaughn, and so, I think that, there is that's an answer that's not. It's a lot like the kind of Cowboys and the playoff situation, right? Like that's just not an answer we're gonna get early in the regular season or in training camp.
No.
Like we have to wait for that. And I think that's similar with Deuce Vaughn, where you can feel confident or feel good about his situation or feel like maybe he could be the guy to provide you some juice and you can feel good about the way he's playing in training camp, but you're not going to know anything until you get an opportunity to see him work against live football drills, where guys are going on the ground and he's actually having to get through the line of scrimmage, get through arm tackles, and not just get touched up by a linebacker who's making sure he's not getting hurt.
And to the opposite end of the spectrum, I can't believe I'm going to defend Zeke here a little bit,
Go.
but I almost don't care what everybody says about Zeke early on in camp, because like if he looks slow, it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, he is slow. He turned 29 yesterday, right? Like that's probably his game. But where he's going to thrive is when the pads come on and there's actual live tackling in it. It's time to move a linebacker right on short yardage and get the first down. So I probably will retweet some bad Zeke takes on Twitter just for the engagement, right? But actually I won't be concerned about Zeke. I mean, until we get to training camp, until we get to the preseason. And I even wonder, like, how much work are the Cowboys going to put on Zeke in the preseason? Because they probably know what they're getting. They probably would like to see more of Rico Dowdle, more of Royce Freeman, more Deuce Vaughn. And then, of course, your guy, Hunter Lipke, like figure out those guys because you know what Zeke is already.
Yeah. And look, I mean, you kind of need to figure out whether one of these down roster younger guys like Malik Davis has taken a step or something. So those guys are all going to get a bunch of carries. I mean, I think all these running backs are going to get a bunch of carries except for Zeke, because of they know what they got there. This is known quantity. They don't need to waste reps, or they're not necessarily trying to preserve him. It's more that they actually need those reps to kind of evaluate these other running backs more than they need them for Zeke.
Yes. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys rookie. And let's start with Tyler Guyton, who many expect to be the week 1 starting left tackle. But will that be the case? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure that you have quality professionals that are right for the job. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast every day, as we want to make sure that you're checking out the YouTube channel. We post videos every single day over there. We are back to 5 shows a week. So no more of just me talking in front of the camera. Landon is back now for the long haul now. But let's talk about some rookie stuff. Tyler Guyton. I think when the Cowboys drafted Tyler Guyton, a lot of people assumed that he would just be the instant day 1 starter at left tackle. Brian Broaddus has kind of pushed back on that a little bit over the last couple of days, saying that there's a good chance that Chuma Udoga is the starting left tackle in week 1, and the good chance that he's the starting left tackle in October. And there's even a slight possibility that the Cowboys maybe redshirt Tyler Guyton because he is so raw. What are you expecting to happen here, and what do you want to see from him in training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my expectation has changed, even with the broadest comments. I mean, I think that he's a round 1 offensive tackle. Like, I do think that there is, taking it slow and then taking it too slow. Guys need to play. That's ultimately,
especially him. He's hardly played.
Exactly, and so I think that is the idea of him potentially not playing for the first month of the season outrageous? Absolutely not. Like, especially when you look at who they're playing the first month of the season, right? So But I think the idea of him taking a full redshirt season that's ludicrous. Frankly, I mean, you don't waste an entire year of first round tackle contract money for the sake of it. Like, you have to let these guys play, especially nowadays. Like, this isn't football in 1992 anymore, and like, you don't get like differing contracts, or you don't slow roll these guys. I mean, these guys have been, even with Guyton and his lack of experience, like, he still was playing at an extremely high level in the Big 12 against a lot of really great players. So obviously it's a massive step up from doing that and facing a Big 12 pass rusher and then going and playing Myles Garrett. But I think that that's why you have a contingency plan of a veteran that can come in and he can get destroyed by Myles Garrett on week 1. So it's like, look, my thought process on this whole thing is that Myles Garrett is Myles Garrett, and him running through Chuma Edoga is probably not going to be any different than him running through Tyler Guyton. So I kind of default onto the idea that let's get the guy out there and have him get his bruises and figure out exactly what that's going to look like. Look, this is not a situation where this kid, hasn't developed enough or hasn't been working hard enough to kind of get where he needs to go. Like, it seems like from everything we've seen, this guy's been working his tail off since he got drafted to get ready for this situation. Yeah. I think that this is a little bit of hedging as far as offensive line coaches go, just to make sure that the pressure isn't on that he has to go out there and start week 1.
I also think they don't like to give offensive linemen jobs. They want them to earn it, right?
And that's, that's pretty much standard for, cranky old offensive line coaches that we all love, right?
Well, I mean, I think a good example of that is when the Cowboys drafted Tyler Smith.
Yep.
I mean, everybody knew that Tyler Smith was going to be starting, but we went through this charade of the first 3 weeks of training camp of Connor McGovern rotating in, right? And then we got to one preseason game, and it's like, oh, yeah, Tyler Smith's just better. Just keep him in there.
Yeah, there's a process getting these guys to earn their starting spots when they've earned it with their draft spot, right? So, I mean, look, is Guyton maybe a little bit more raw than other late first-round picks at tackle? Maybe, but I don't know that he's a lot more raw. I think that was kind of my take with him coming out, was I didn't think that he had too much more ceiling, because I think he is actually a better higher floor player than I think a lot of people realize. So I definitely I've mentioned it. I think he's going to take his lumps early in the season, but I also think that that's kind of important. And if the Cowboys can find a way to survive that, I think it's going to make for a better player in Tyler Guyton in November and December when you really need him. It's going to be tough for whoever you throw out there in the first week of this against this kind of murderer's row of pass rushers. Might as well, do so while kind of getting a young guy some experience and giving him an idea of, exactly what he's signed up for.
And I think the same could be said for Cooper Beebe. Now, I think there's a less likely of a chance that he starts in week 1 just because he's a third-round pick, and they clearly like Brock Hoffman. But I would anticipate that Beebe will eventually find his way into the starting lineup. There was just one other note about training camp that I wanted to throw in here, Landon. I'm curious to see how much time they devote to the new kickoff rules, because this is completely new. How much live tackling do they do on the kickoff rules? How much, how many different ideas does Bones Fossil have about ways to return and ways to cover kicks? It's just one of the things that we see them work on special teams a lot early on in practice.
Yeah.
Or early on, like the first couple of weeks of practice. I am curious to see what that looks like, because it's going to be totally different than anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of back up what you're saying, like they start out almost every practice with special teams work, and so they split up into different groups and put on a bunch of weird jerseys and do a bunch of very weird looking drills, especially if you've never seen them before. Look, I'll say this, and I think we've mentioned this before about the kind of change of the kickoff rules. Bones Fossil has been talking about this for well over a year. Bones has been, if not the spearhead for this change, definitely the special teams coordinator most influencing this thing.
Without a doubt.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's all a long way of saying he has plans.
Yes.
Like he's been thinking about this for a long time. And I think, it's been one of those classic kind of just, rubbing his hands like Birdman, waiting for this to come down. So I know he's got lots of schemes and lots of interesting wrinkles up his sleeve, and that he's excited about these rule changes. So I anticipate, yes, there being quite a bit of work on this. And I anticipate there being quite a bit of excitement in kind of getting to institute this stuff. I'm excited about it because I really do think it's going to add more opportunity for big plays, more opportunity for just excitement in a area of special teams that, really felt like was going to either go extinct or basically, have all the excitement removed from it completely to the point where we don't even care about the kicking game outside of extra points and field goals. So to see this kind of get back, put the excitement, get it re-injected back to this element of the game, I think is really exciting, not only for us, but especially for Bones Fossil.
Just a quick prediction. I see one of two things happening, like in the first month of the regular season. I see either a bunch of kickoff returns for touchdown as we just get used to the new rule and the way that it's covered, or two, teams just booting the ball out of the back of the end zone and saying, hey, take the ball at the 30, let everybody else try to figure out the rules and the way, and then we'll adapt it then. We'll take the extra 5 yards of penalty yardage or whatever you want to call it, just so we can get a bigger sample size on what the correct strategy is here. I'm excited. It's just something new that we get to watch this year. It should be a lot of fun.
I also think that it's naturally going to turn the tide on scoring, right? Like I think it was the last 2 years, scoring has actually dipped down,
way
right?
down. Yes.
Yeah. So I actually think it's going to kind of turn the tide on that because like you just said, there's going to be some conservative teams that are just going to kick it out of the back of the end zone, which is giving you 5 more yards than you had previously than last year, right? So you're 5 yards closer to the end zone. And then, like you said, there's going to be a certain amount of teams that are going to be really good at this and a certain amount of teams that are going to be really bad at this. And that is going to make for a whole bunch of extra special teams touchdowns. So I imagine scoring the tide of the trend of scoring going back down over the last few years. The tide may turn on that a little bit with this rule change.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can check out the YouTube channel as well, Locked On Cowboys over there. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.